In recent years, we have heard about companies and organizations going digital. What exactly is digital? And what is a digital organization? The COVID-19 has accelerated digitization plans. The Singapore government has provided $3.5 billion to help companies to digitize. In a recent survey, upwards of 75% of all Singaporean companies are accelerating their digitization plans. What exactly do we need to be successful in this path? And what are some of the massive benefits that we can get from it? To answer these questions, let us invite our next guest, Alan Lee, Head of Grab Operational Intelligence, to share with us some of these powerful insights to help us to move towards the goal that we want. Welcome, Alan Lee. So Alan, welcome to the Tony Tan Show.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for inviting.
Well, you work with Grab, one of the most exciting, forward-looking and famous companies, digital companies, I might add, that come out of Singapore in recent times. What is it like to work with such an amazing organization?
Okay, I must say it's been super exciting so far. The work pace is extremely fast, right? People are young, people are very energetic, and the most amazing thing is there's this kind of feeling or spirit in the air, right, that says we always want to do our best to create impact, to kind of improve the current situation, and we won't accept the status quo, you see. So very different from a typical corporate MNC environments, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess it's very fast-paced and forward-looking.
Extremely fast-paced. Takes a little bit getting used to, but after a while, you'll find that this culture of work is very contagious, you see. There's a bunch of young people who are just putting their minds together, trying to co-invent new stuff that will hit the market very quickly and create that impact, right? So it's contagious, and you very soon find yourself going along with this kind of pace.
This kind of culture.
Exactly.
Well.
This kind of culture, this kind of pace, this kind of, should I say, ways of working.
Grab, we know that it is an organization that is very digital in nature. Some people say they are born in the cloud. This word digitization has been such a big buzzword, especially recently. So what is the definition of digitization, Alan?
Okay. Great question there, right, Tony. Before we go into specifics, right, I'd say there is a need to understand a difference between two terms. There is digitization, and then there is digitalization, right? So if you look at it, just to go as layman as possible, right? Digitization is nothing but changing, right, your information from an analog source into a more digital one. Take, for example, right, you have a hard copy document with handwritten notes on it. Digitizing that document means turning it into a text file that is then stored onto your local hard drive somewhere. Right. Now, then digitalization, according to the definition by Gartner, right, is essentially the usage of digital technologies to transform business operations. Now, when you then try to understand these two definitions side by side, right, you'll realize very quickly that digitization is a very important first step to digitalization. But you cannot stop there. Stopping at just digitizing your documents will only get you that far. Yes, it enables you to convert the analog types of information, handwriting, into your ones and zeros. But if you're not doing anything about it, using that digitized information to transform the way you do things, then you're going to reap minimal only impact and outcome.
I guess that was really a very interesting explanation. In fact, I think a lot of people is very confused with these two terms. It's a bit muddy and hazy around there.
It is. And if I may add, right, I'd say the word digital is yes, Tony, to your earlier point, the buzzword of the day, right? It is the topic of the day today, but there is also a lot of confusion around what this word and also its associated ecosystem means, right? We need to try to dissect it because digital is such a big word, and it means different things to different people. To the companies, like you mentioned, right? Grab is a very digital organization. We are digitally native, I'd say. Okay, and we might want to go into a little bit detail later on that. But to a digital native company, being digital could be, operating in the cloud, having all of your manual processing work automated without a single sort of a human intervention, right? But to an analog types of company on the other end of the spectrum, right? Digital could be having a paperless environment. We're not even talking about paperless, right? Just having a little bit less hard copy paperwork, that is being digital already. The important thing I would say that companies, that individuals need to know about digital today is that it is not a binary types of term. So it's not just about whether you are digital or not, right? There is a whole spectrum, and it is a journey towards the end true north or outcome, right? So a lot of companies are thinking these days, I'd like to go digital. Am I digital enough? When will I be digital, right? So I think those are the wrong questions to ask. It's a continuum. You always keep on improving. And by the time that, say, you undertake a digital transformation project and you're done with that, right? I'm very sure the next big thing comes. And it's always being on top of the evolution game that truly makes a company digital in nature.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that you're telling me about, the differences, and
Yep.
thank you for providing so much clarity about these different terms.
Happy to.
And I think the thing that I get from you is the journey. It is a journey.
Correct. It is a journey.
Now, how do you see this journey changes in the last couple of months? We have seen government recently. Singapore government has pumped in $3.5 billion to help company to go through digital transformation. And in a recent survey, we see upwards of 75% of Singaporean companies surveyed say they're embarking on some form of a digital transformation project.
Yes.
So how does this COVID-19, this pandemic play out in this journey that we are talking about?
Okay. That's an excellent question, Tony. I'd say the pandemic situation has, if anything, accelerated companies' pace of digitalization. And why so, right? If we look at how COVID-19 has shaped the world, I want to look at it from mainly three angles, right? COVID-19 has changed the way we live, work, and play, right? If you think about living, today we are spending most of the times at home. We are surviving on either home-cooked meals or deliveries. And even if we do get the rare break, right, the rare chance to head out for dinner, right, you basically have your mask on until the food is served, right? That's how our ways of living has changed. Our ways of working, obviously, large proportion of us are now working from home. We are attending Zoom meetings as the main form of communications with each other. And the days just seem longer than what they were before, right? So from where we started off of a 9 to 5 typical sort of working hours in the office, right now it's more of whenever work or interaction or Zoom calls are required. So that's work, right? And finally, play. Right, events that are large scale or group activities have largely been disallowed. So your mega events, concerts are no longer happening, and attractions or even retail outlets, right, have a hard headcount sort of cap to manage the crowd and to manage social distancing within. And lastly, your night sports, entertainment joints are a thing of the past, right? Today, the best thing we get is probably a dinner with some drinks in a restaurant, right? And yet you have to make sure you finish your beers by 10:30.
Right.
So the ways of live, work, and play has really, really been transformed. And this is the impetus, right, to push people and organizations towards a working model that is no longer, should I say, familiar to us anymore. So basically, the conventional, tried and tested way of operating a business, and typically we associate this with the brick and mortar setups, physical labor involved work, and a lot of association with hard copies, applications, forms, and all of that. It's largely, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but much, much less relevant today. And to just stretch beyond the impact of COVID towards the acceleration of digitalization, right? It's largely, I'm afraid, coming to a point of view where in order to survive in this new normal, it is digitalize or become redundant. What do you think about that, Tony?
Yeah, I think, Alan, to reinforce what you say, I've been thinking about this topic a lot as well. And I do see that this new normal is not going to go away.
That's right.
If you look at the latest release on research by the World Health Organization, pandemics are going to come faster because of climate change. So if you see these patterns, these recurring patterns, that means this new norm is here for the long term. And if this is here for the long term, and we need to adjust to these circumstances, then I think that we need to accelerate some of these trends that we are seeing. So I totally agree with you there. I think the research is all pointing towards the same conclusions.
Correct. And I do vividly recall reading from an article, right, that in some countries already, even though we're only a couple months into the pandemic situation, right, but researchers have already shown that in a couple of countries where they are far less digitally advanced, the past 6 months of digitization or digitalization projects or advancements within companies of those countries, right, have far outgrown what the same companies have done over the past 10 years in those countries. So that is the alarming rate at which the virus situation, the inability to go back to the old ways of working have forced people to really soup up and supercharge their way of transforming themselves. Right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when we talk about whether you are digitized or not, it's not really straightforward or 1 or 0, right? A lot of people fall within a wide range of what do you mean by maturity stage on this particular journey.
Yes.
Of course, at one end, there's a fully analog. People who have really very traditional. And then the other side is people like Grab that is really digital and using it as a data-driven organization. And then we have the rest, 95% in between this spectrum.
Correct.
Some of them are quasi-analog, quasi-digital. Is this a zero-sum game? What happens if this analog or slightly digitized organization, will they be able to survive in this new norm? And in this new wave of competition from this agile startup and from these digital organizations?
I see. All right. So you are right in painting the spectrum, right, of companies, and indeed, companies today largely fall into those 3 buckets. The digitally native ones basically are, just to quote you from earlier, Tony, born in the cloud, and the digital way, the expedient way of doing things is the only way they know, right? So they do not wish to accept a manual, a repetitive ways of getting things done solely by manual labor. And then on the other opposite end of the spectrum, right, where you have analog companies very, very comfortable with scaling by manpower. And what I mean is that whenever a new scope or a new area that the company wants to go into, right, hire a bunch of people, throw them into the equation, and then hopefully you get the results and the outcomes, right? And they are very, very comfortable with paper pushing, right? So, but today, I dare say, there are very, very few companies that are totally analog, right? Because especially in the current context, this would be one that puts them in a situation where it is immensely tough to continue running their business operations, right? And you are absolutely right. The largest bucket of the tree is essentially your bucket in between the two extremes, and I call these the digital adopters, right? So companies who have realized that the analog ways of working are a thing of the past and would no longer work, and aspire to be like the digital native companies, right, where digital is top of mind, the fast and expedient way of doing things is the only way of doing things. So they hope to get on that train and be able to improve themselves as soon as they can. The key thing I would like to point out for digital adopters is that it is, number one, just in direct answer of your question, Tony, in my opinion, never a zero-sum game, right? So it is not a situation of that you can only go that much digital, you can only do it that fast, or if you don't adopt and change, that you will obviously fall off the cliff immediately. No, I don't think it is a zero sum. The business world is very diverse, and there are huge opportunities for or against in different directions, right? And once knowing that and moving beyond that, right, it is then the next piece of advice for digital adopters is that there is no definitive right answer. I feel that the days of purchasing large-scale digital solutions or technological tools just because they have worked for someone else, those days are over already. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and going for or shooting for this kind of things, right, emulating the business model of your competitors, playing catch-up, is just not going to work, because every single business and the ecosystem that they operate in, the customers that they serve and interact with are very different. And which leads me to my last point. In terms of adopting the digital working model, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there is no such thing as a finite stage where once you hit, I am digital enough, and I'm going to continue the current ways of operations forever, right? So that wouldn't work also, because like I mentioned earlier, with every big transformative project, it takes time. Right. And once you reach to that milestone, the next big thing has come. And the most important thing is to hold on to the mindset of embracing digital, which would say that you are looking for the next big challenge or next wave of transformation to improve. So those are the three main points I would give to the digital adopters today.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that success builds upon one another, right? You have to get to a certain stage and then you amplify, get to a certain stage and amplify it, and this is a journey. Correct. You will never arrive. It was just a constant state of improvement, constant state of adoption, constant state of fine-tuning.
Correct, exactly.
And I like the fact that you talk about a journey, because today, I think one of the biggest fuel for very successful digital companies, whether it's Amazon, Alibaba, or Grab, is data. Yep. And that journey allows you to create that data, and that data will take time, wouldn't it?
Yes, certainly it will take time. And I'm already guessing what's your next question, Tony. How much time would it take, right, for a typical company, or our biggest bucket here, right, the digital adopters, to get to a stage where they are savvy with data, they are leveraging the most out of data that they could, right, to accelerate their business? I would say, before we tackle that problem, it is important to look at the end-to-end value chain of doing good data processing and analytics. Right? The end-to-end value chain says that in order to have good data, you first need the correct infrastructure set up to capture information and data in a right structured manner that can be useful. Right? If we are looking at just capturing anything and everything in something that nobody can digest. Of course, there are advanced AI technologies today that would dive into a data lake and pick out information or generate insights for companies. But I would still say that for our chief group of folks who are looking to adopt and embrace digital, that is too much of a messy outcome. Right? It is possible, it can be done, but would not be the first thing that comes to mind, right? For someone who wants to get the data value chain right. So infrastructure and getting the right setup is one. The next stage is in having the correct data processing models and frameworks to make sense of the information that you have now captured in a very nice and readable format. So this is where you would need to pump in information into either pre-built models or evolving models with all your predictive kind of modeling, forecasting mechanisms already built in. And this is the stage where you put a lot of attention to tweak the model to get the outcome that you want. Right? The last group is once the data and information has been pumped in through the processing models and frameworks, and you now have visualizations, you now have charts that you can look at, how do you derive business insights, right? And this takes a lot of information, acumen about the business that you're running, the ecosystem you're working against and within, right? And what basically the percentages and the pies mean to your business. Now, this simplistic end-to-end three-step value chain of doing good data processing and analytics is basically helmed by three different groups of specialists, if you will, right? Which are your data engineers, your data scientists, and then your data analysts. So once you set up this flow, you start processing information that has been captured in a good and quality way that can eventually help you to make better business decisions, right? Because there is inference into how the current operating model metrics are, and you can turn that into actionable sort of next steps. To go back to the question of how long it would take a typical, say, digital adopter company or digital aspirant, right, to go through this end-to-end value chain, I put it at anywhere between 4 to 6 years, right? But the good thing is that all companies today, like we mentioned earlier, are not in a definitive locked-in position of 0 or 1. People are scattered across the entire spectrum, and you're starting off a different step or ground, right? So it may or may not take that full range that I've quoted, but the most important thing is to get started.
Right. I think that's the important thing, right? Once we get started, we can adjust and we can fine tune and arrive. And what you have mentioned, this journey, it is important because at the end state of it, we get all these data points. And with all these data points, we can have the potential to overlay artificial intelligence to amplify the value of this data.
Correct.
How do you see artificial intelligence in play here?
Just to get a little bit more clarity to the question, Tony, did you mean the impact of AI on data analytics and hence the wider implication of the organization?
Yes, I mean that's the holy grail, because people, now that you already have all these data points, right?
Correct.
And for us to be even more powerful and more relevant and even more competitive, people are overlaying with artificial intelligence today on these data points.
That's right.
So I just want to find out, right, what's your view about this artificial intelligence? How does it help to amplify effectiveness of an organization once you have gathered all this valuable data?
That's an excellent question, Tony. So I just want to emphasize the last word in your question, which is effectiveness. There is another parameter at play here, which I would bring in, and I like to call that efficiency. Right? If we go down to the roots of AI was it's not essentially new technology that sprouted out in the last 5 to 10 years. No, and the idea goes way back, right? And it first formed because of, frankly, efficiency in processing information, in getting things done, right? You could go with the conventional ways of manually accumulating information on a piece of paper in a spreadsheet, or manually tweaking bar charts that you create for visualization, right? But you realize that in the end-to-end value chain that I was talking about earlier, the key sort of money point, right? The thing that really influences and backs an organization and gives them the benefits of investment in that whole end-to-end journey lies right at the very end, where you are able to extract actionable insights and use that to influence business decision making. So how do you improve this end-to-end value chain such that you spend as little time and effort as possible on the uninteresting, boring bits, but no doubt essential because they are needed in that consequence, in that sequence, right? Without which you never get to the main outcome, or it would be a very dirty outcome, right? That it does not allow you full trust in terms of the insights, right? So that's when AI came into the picture. How do we automate data processing? How do we automate the idea generation or the visualizations of bits and pieces of information? And we're not talking about the application to the business yet, right? So this portion was the main spur for AI, right? Mechanical steps that have to be taken just so that we can get to the main outcome. And the idea of using automated processing, right? Hence, artificial intelligence in a sense, right? To get us to that main outcome. Today, of course, fast forward the many decades since AI first came into the picture, right? It is used in far wider ranging applications built upon the base of automating uninteresting, boring work, right? To the effect of doing more than what it could have been possible earlier. But at the end of the day, it is still, so we're talking more about the effectiveness realm having moved beyond efficiency, right? So with AI, greater outcomes that were never before imagined could have been made possible because the efficiency or the churn part of the setup and framework is now being done in the blink of an eye, right? So this allows far greater implications and creativity from the creators, right? That give us far more than what we would have thought we'd be able to reap. In that sense, I think is the key application of AI in terms of good data processing in a company, Tony.
So Alan, let me bring you back to a point that I find rather interesting in the earlier part of our conversation. So you mentioned about building that framework for us to get to a stage to become a data-driven organization to unlock some of these benefits.
That's
you
right.
spoke about a need for data analytics team, data engineers, or even data scientists. Unfortunately, for most of our audience out there, we don't have this luxury of these rare talents. So is there an opportunity for us with a little bit less resources, like what you have mentioned, to work with a partner or find a way around it for us to get some of these advantages without these investments that you have mentioned?
Correct. And that is a very excellent point, and it's very critical to understand the key landscape that our companies face today, right? Yes, they are in a situation where there is a strong need to improve and adopt the digital idea, but they are also limited by finite resources. And what's worse, right, is the clock is ticking. right? So the push to accelerate digitalization, as we had mentioned earlier. So is it really an unfortunate landscape where companies are expected to pull together what they have, right, within the basket and make do with what the less than ideal types of data processing and analytics outcomes? I would tend to disagree, right? The idea of having borrowed help, like you mentioned, Tony, seeking expertise from outside of the organization where they exist, is really the key point of stretching the executives' thinking outside of their conventional box, right? So if you are somewhere late or mature in the end-to-end spectrum of digitalization adoption, right, clearly there are people who have done it earlier or are way ahead of you, and there are learning points there to be adopted. So the key idea is then to embrace the decision to change, the need to press forward and improve, but this does not have to be done by you only on a solo basis. So I'd say don't be shy to borrow and seek help externally, either through a form of adoption of best practices, right, learning from the experts, or injection of new specialty or talent that wasn't available in the organization before.
Yeah. Perhaps like working with partners who are out there,
Exactly.
who have this special domain knowledge that will help you to amplify and speed up
Correct.
your journey.
And partners particularly who have done it for more other companies than what you are going about alone, right? The interesting situation or trap that a lot of companies along the way or journey of transformation feel they are falling into is that I have to go it alone. That nobody understands my business except me, and there is no real replica of my business model somewhere else. But I like to stretch the thinking to go a little bit beyond and understand that while there can never be an identical replica of your business model in the current exact same ecosystem and landscape that you're working on, right, there are companies out there who have a lot of common ground, who face similar issues in a different shape or form, scale and intensity, but who have breached those gaps. So organizations, particularly like you mentioned, right, external third-party partners who have helped some of these other organizations breach the gap, could then have that insight that you lack right now to push it forward.
Thank you, Alan. There's hope for me now. I begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
There's hope for everyone, I assure you.
And then I want to ask you a question, right?
Yes,
so we talk about
feel free.
A wide spectrum of companies within different stages of digitization.
Indeed.
Let us bring this forward to a company who is matured or very advanced, or someone who are born in the cloud, who are digital natives.
Yes.
Can you share with us 3 distinct advantages this company has over companies who are analog or quasi-digitized?
Interesting. Now, I would like to even take that and superimpose upon the situation that we're all facing right now in the middle of a pandemic that is ever evolving, and I don't think we're anywhere near out of the woods. Situation is still changing as we speak, right? So what happens to, what are the key advantages of a digital enterprise as compared to someone who is not quite there yet? If you think about it, digital enterprises are the ones who have essentially largely digitized their information sources. They are able to reach and connect with their employees, their customers, their suppliers and vendors, right, without physical face-to-face meetings, and largely have already heavily invested, if not built it from scratch, right? Digital tools and technologies that enable a working from home model to be effective, right? So organizations like this have a natural advantage over someone who is still doing, like what we were discussing earlier, paper pushing, who still require a team of people to be working in an enclosed finite space, because that is no longer going to be sufficient today, or even allowed, right? If you think about it, because of distancing measures and health and safety of your individual co-workers. And these guys have been probably thinking about investing in digitalization, but I have not quite bridged the gap yet. Right. So basically not yet put money on the table and put things into actions, walking the talk. So if you compare these two situations, then it's easy to see that there's vast advantages, and it's no wonder that the digital enterprises today, in the face of a pandemic, are the first ones who have emerged strong, right? And at least are able to get their business operations running to a stage which is close to, if not the same as, or at the tempo that they were operating at before the onset of the virus, right? And also are the ones who are able to still create incrementally more value.
Yes.
Right? Because the infrastructure, the ways of thinking, and the ways of working on an end-to-end perspective are already there.
Yes.
They are able to reach customers on the cloud. They are able to have seamless back-end processing without the need to have physical labor in the back office environments. And largely, at the end of the day, new business model that comes right with this digital infrastructure already set in place is very scalable and replicable as well.
Yes.
From all of those perspectives, I think we can say clearly the advantages are there.
I think if I summarize it, the first most important thing that you have mentioned is agility.
Yes.
You can stop anything just like that, right?
Correct.
That's how fast you are, because you are digital, right?
Correct.
And second thing, you are moving at scale. Right now, you cover everything, you cover the world, because your presence is available anytime, any place, 7/24 hours.
Correct, exactly.
And the third, the topic that you love so much, is the ability of putting all this data and use AI to amplify it. And if you don't have this tree, right, I think that you will be at a disadvantage over time.
It's a clear disadvantage.
Yeah,
right.
And you are right to say that it's not a zero-sum game, but if you don't have a form of one or even all these 3 points, there could be a real possibility you might fade into irrelevance over time. In that sense.
In that sense, yes, there is a real risk. I would like to turn that around and say that it is a risk, but with all people who are familiar with corporate business risk, right, we understand that it is a situation of statistics, right? It's a situation of probability, right? So, just to walk a little bit away from all the gloom and doom that we've been talking about over the past 5 to 10 minutes, I'd say there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Even though companies who are not quite there in terms of the end-to-end digitalization journey, right, it is not all dark and that there are no opportunities or this is a definitively end game for all, right? In fact, I would say, based on what we had just been discussing with each other, ample opportunity exists. It starts with the correct mindset, right, to adopt the digital ways of working through your own internal resources and borrowed help that we also discussed. There is a good chance to transform and be able to remain relevant, right, before it is too late.
Alan, I would like to take a pause here.
Sure.
I want to bring out something. Have a coffee. That's going to be another interesting topic that
right now.
we want to talk about. Let's have a sip and we'll continue.
So much better.
Yeah. when this conversation with you was we are being planning out this conversation, planning
Yes.
for this podcast.
Yes, I
Something
recall.
happened yesterday in Singapore that took everybody by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Robinsons has collapsed after a good run of 163 years in Singapore.
Unfortunately.
One of the most iconic brands.
Indeed.
Yes, and it is sad, but at the same time, it's also reflect the trends of the time. I want to hear your opinion about Robinsons, because I think that it is a good case study for us to have a connection with the topic that we are talking about.
Sure.
And I'd like to ask you a question. When was the last time you shopped at Robinsons?
That's a tough one. I can't quite recall, and I think that speaks volumes about the situation. I put it anything between 3 to 5 years being the last time I shopped. The last time I did chance upon and look into a store would be a lot more frequent and closer to home. But then again, that does not keep the business afloat.
Wow. And I think that speaks the same for me. I'd just like to ask you a question. In your opinion, personal opinion, what could Robinsons do better, as an organization? Is there an opportunity for them to use some of the things that we have spoken about in terms of digitization to not only survive but to thrive as a retail concept, and probably survive in today's pandemic world?
Excellent question there, Tony. And I like to offer a few points of view, and hopefully then later perhaps tap into your brain as well, right, Tony? Because I know you run a very successful technology business. So would like a lot of the going ons for your firm would be applicable also to situations like this, right? So maybe to level up the conversation a little bit, I speak of retailers at large, right? The common business operating model that we are all familiar with and that shoppers are very quick to embrace. And as you can see, right, I was just reading an article earlier this morning that shoppers have flocked to Robinsons just to see their final few days of operations, right? So the fan base is there, but the business model that the shoppers are familiar with or used to be very, very familiar with are one of a brick and mortar retail shop. Window shopping is a thing, right? Space to explore different products under one roof is also yet another aspect. But if we fast forward that to today's consumer spending patterns and habits, right? Like we were sort of reinforcing with each other earlier, Tony, the last time we walked into a mega shopping center like that offers those 3 points that I've painted out, right, is likely to be few and far between. But if we think about the last time we made a purchase on consumer products, that is a lot closer to home.
Yes.
And that would be likely more often than not through your personal mobility and technology devices, your phones, your tablets, or even laptops in the comfort of your home.
Right.
Which also still gives you the exposure to the range of products, right? To and a whole different ball game in terms of pricing considerations, right, and cross comparisons that was never present when you're talking about a single retailer and shopping physically within, right? So it's easy to see why consumers have switched to this model, which is, I would say, the true embodiment of efficiency in terms of time, effort spent, and effectiveness, right? In terms of getting the best deals, wide range of products, and so on. So it's easy to see why consumers would adopt the latter. For retailers, how is it that this thinking or notice of the changing consumer spending behaviors have not caught up with the major or sort of the mainstay ways of operating a retail shop? So why is there this disconnect, right? I like to offer a few different points of consideration, and feel free to add on, right, Tony. One thing very strongly is over-reliance on a model that has worked in the past. It has served me well over the past decades. We are seeing the revenue, albeit a little bit trailing down because of the rise of e-commerce and alternative retail purchasing options, right? But it is working to a certain extent, right? The perceived difficulty in adopting a model that would entirely shake up how things have been run so far. So imagine a switch from running a brick and mortar retail shop into a pure online based e-commerce solution, right? And this switch, we do not expect it to happen over one night.
Yep.
Right. So different people assign or tag different degrees of effort, difficulty, cost, and resource requirements to the journey to get there. Hence, a certain impediment to making a change, right? And the last thing I like to offer really is the thinking of where do I even begin, right? I want to reach that new end state, but that suddenly a whole volume of things to do is overwhelming, right? What do I do with my physical labor? What do I do with my real estate right now? What do I do with all of the physical inventory, right? Which is currently on a fast-moving types basis, and now suddenly becomes one where online orders just come across a platform direct into my point of sale system, right? So I would say there are a myriad of factors, but these three underpin the disconnect between the consumer changing patterns of buying retail goods versus typical brick and mortar retailers sort of continued ways of operating their business.
Yeah.
What would you say to that, Tony?
I think you have a very good point. I think the company structure has to be ready for these changes, and we talked about agility earlier,
Correct.
which is absolutely necessary. Management, of course, right, to throw their weight behind this to make it a important pivot. I felt that if you look at Robinsons, they also have an online store, but it is not something that is part of their main strategy.
You're right.
And I think that they miss out an opportunity there. The world has changed, but the attention and the focus for them has not. So they don't have the data points, because at the end of the day, it's about connecting millennials, Gen Z, and the opportunity for big users of digital marketing, social media, and the combination of your online platforms and your apps. And these have to be connected together on top of what you have said, right?
Exactly.
So if this is not put into play, and then if you are stuck in the old operating model, and you will slide. And I think that is, I feel, one of the key issues that what Robinsons is facing.
Correct.
Of course, at the end of the day, it's not just about this. It's also about the retail experience. But this plays a big part in my humble opinion. All right, from our experience with engaging with customers.
Fair points. Very good points there, Tony. Yeah. But maybe we can stretch that thinking a little bit further, right? What I said earlier. How do you see running a technology business as you have, right, being different from a brick and mortar retail business, right? Would you say there are learning points that someone in the retail space could adopt from our technology firms of today?
Of course, there's so many things, right? Today, we're talking about retail. Retail is one big industry that's going through so much changes.
Indeed.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to bring some of this tech into play now, right? Of course, data point, being a data-driven organization of AI is critical. And the other things is, we also want to talk about augmented reality. How do we overlay information? How do we enhance that retail experience? Put different concepts into play, personalize our customer experience. So there is plenty of opportunity for us to excel, right? So I think that if we are able to combine some of this tech and bring it to the retail store, I think that it's going to be a game changer, and that's what we see.
I see. Fully agreed with you there, Tony.
So Alan, just we spoke about all these steps that we need to take, the advantages of digital organizations. Can you give our audience like 3 tips on how they can successfully adopt digitization in their organization.
I see. Okay, great question there, but perhaps allow me to approach it from the other direction, right? Because tips and tricks, guides to digitizing, like I had mentioned before, with digital being a big word and a huge spectrum where everybody is on at a different part of the journey, really guides or tips and tricks are hit and miss, right, depending on what you're doing at any one time. So I'd like to turn that around and perhaps offer three main pitfalls of digital transformation, right, that I've seen in my experience so far. And they largely, I think, circle around resistance to change, right? Not knowing where to start, depending on what are the latest technologies that are available and so on and so forth, right? And finally, having the ability to forecast or to put in mind an end state or true north that you want to achieve, right? So I think these are the three main pitfalls that companies typically face today when they adopt their digital transformation plans, right? And I can offer some examples just to bring a little bit of color to the conversation. Resistance to change is a very prevalent and real situation. In my previous life as a business consultant, I've worked with clients who have the best and biggest, most ambitious business plans, right? But fail to execute to even get started across the starting line, right? Or fail to bring it to complete fruition because they are unable to string along people, right, to make that change happen. A case in point was an MNC organization that I have worked with a couple years before. And this organization story has it that one day decided to really overhaul their finance operating model, right? And embark on a journey to centralize common resources, right? So it's a shared services model to do more with less, right? So on paper and in theory, in front of the executives, a clear business case, right, without a single silver of doubt. But fast forward 1.5 years into the execution, right, which is already 3 times as much as any typical organization, in my experience, of their scale, that are able to move to a shared concept, right? So after 3 times the time, they are nowhere near even getting the project off its feet, because most of the first year, in fact, was spent in internal conversations, the central HQ team convincing themselves that it would work. And even that outcome took a little more than a year to complete, because there were just layers and hoops and barriers, right, of departments, teams, bosses who weren't quite aligned to the new ways of working. Then the final half a year was spent in communicating what was finally decided and aligned, but only within HQ. And when it reached the regional firms, which were subject to the centralization objective, the communication just ground to a halt, right? So it was push after push of just getting people subscribed to the idea, not even yet boots on the ground making things work and change happen. So after half a year of that effort, with a total 1.5 years in the backlog, right, the project was cancelled. So never ever underestimate, right, the resistance to change, even if at the top, at the logical level, it is most certainly, without silver of doubt, the right thing to do. So that is what I would caution companies, right, to think about. And the other 2 points, like I mentioned, right, is really intuitive in a sense, and we've largely talked about it. The idea that not knowing where to start off because of a gamut of different possibilities, right? And projects that can be undertaken. So the main piece of advice here really is take a look internally. Internalize the learnings and best practices of other companies who may have walked the path before you, but by no means take that as a holy Bible of digital transformation, right? Most importantly, look internally, decide what needs to change and what can be changed in what sequence, right? To bring your organization to a digital operating model. Put it on a logical and achievable right roadmap, and basically get the pieces started. Because you want to generally avoid a situation of analysis paralysis here, right? People who are always thinking, I'm not ready enough. I'm just not there yet.
You're right.
There's things to do, but we just need to be super extra careful.
Right.
All of these things need to be balanced in terms of getting the ball rolling.
Right.
And the last point about having a true north or an end state in mind, but yet having the flexibility of not locking it into position, right? Because remember, we said it's not a zero-sum game. Companies need to continually evolve to catch the next big wave, but without an end state in mind that you can articulate again to people. And this strings across the other 2 points that I mentioned earlier about people's resistance to change and also where to get started. Without that end state in mind, it is very difficult to energize the company to go towards a digital operating model.
These are corporate gems right there. Three sacred points for us to consider as we embark on our digital transformation.
I hope so, Tony.
So Alan, we all know that any digital transformation comes from the top, right? Leadership plays a key part.
Indeed.
And in today's world, leadership is going through a lot of changes. What do you think about these digital leadership skills that we need to adopt today to make sure that we are able to harness and drive organization towards the right direction?
I see. Okay. Indeed. But I'd like to perhaps, Tony, if I may, slice down that question into two main parts, right? If you're looking into understanding key leadership skills required in a digital enterprise, we need to understand that the ambit or the idea of having good leadership is around the ability of the leader to create and generate outcomes from people other than himself or herself, right? So basically create outcomes through other people. That is true leadership. And along that equation, the most important, undoubtedly, component is people, right? So good leadership skills, in my point of view, channel into largely how do you manage people well. So good people management capability and skills, understanding and being able to deploy the right resources, acquiring the correct talent as and when it is required to push along the digital agenda. And also, if you think about it, right, another aspect that is related very, very strongly to people aside from people management skills is what I would call
empathy. Do you think empathy plays a key part in leadership today? I mean, when you're managing teams, when we are talking about from a management perspective, right? You know, to get people to harness these people to execute. Some people ever mention about empathy to me. What do you think about empathy? You think something critical in today's world in such changes?
Yes, and I will explain why, Tony. Today, if you look at our new generation of workers, I think all of us, hands down, agree, are very different from what it was when you and I were in the workforce, right?
Yep.
But in what ways? The current generation of workers today are very perceptive, right? They are also very agile and flexible, right? They take in all of the information and resources from all around them. They are able to sieve through what they need,
Right.
deprioritize what they don't need, because in a digital age that they have grown up with, right, they are not exposed to a situation anymore where availability of information is going to make or break the
Yes.
your ability to improve and develop, right?
Yep.
But rather, in today's age, information is available to them at their fingertips from when they touch any digital device.
Right.
So that overload that sometimes I personally feel, and I don't know whether you are exposed to or you are subject to this kind of challenge, right, Tony, is sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed with the access to all of that information very quickly as well, right? But the workers of today, the new generation of workers today, do not face this kind of issue. They have grown up with this kind of information and data access to the extent where they are able to quickly prioritize and deprioritize and move on with the pieces that they require. How do we then work very well with a different, should I say, make of workers that are different from our ways of working, our values and ethics? That is where, again, back to your original question, Tony, empathy, I feel, plays a very, very critical role. So you're right, a leader, a digital leader today needs to have strong empathy, right? Being able to understand the new generation of workers, how to string them along together with I like to avoid the word older, but the more mature generations of workers, right? And create common outcomes. The last leadership skill, I would say, is required to thrive in a digital enterprise and organization, really, is the ability to understand and note the keyword over here, understand the key aspects of digital tools and technologies and the outcomes and benefits that you can bring to an organization, right? I did not actually say that a digital leader today needs to be able to use and work on these digital tools, right? Because and I like to share a little bit based on my experience in Grab, right? There are a lot of different thoughts or thinking around, having the degree of digital skills or competencies that you require in order to work in a technology startup. And based on my experience so far, I like to really quell that belief, right? And say that the need to have strong programming coding skills in order to be able to join a technology startup firm is a myth, right? So it is by no means an entry criteria,
right?
But the essence of understanding what digital technologies can bring to an organization and how it can impact and potentially benefit the business operating model is very much key. And once the digital leader is able to spot these kind of implications, that he or she is able to then leverage the first 2 points we were talking about, good people management skills, good empathy for their workers, to be able to string everybody together in a concerted kind of effort and goal.
Alan, the last point that you mentioned is extremely important because today is not like last time. Technology is moving at such an important pace, and it's not just one, it's multiple technologies are coming together.
Correct.
Without understanding and getting clarity, there's no way for the organization to move forward.
You're definitely right. But just to hold on to that thought, right, Tony, and I thought one additional piece I wanted to bring across really is the 3 points that we have discussed and agreed are top skills that will make or break a digital leader, right? You would realize that only one of them absolutely have some tinge of relation to digital technologies.
Right.
The other two are tried and tested conventional people management skills that have since the beginning of time when people got together to work with each other and generate joint outcomes.
Yeah.
Right? These skills have remained and thrived until where we are today.
Yeah.
So even if we're talking about a brand new concept, right, which is how to transition from an analog or a less digital ways of working into being a digital enterprise, these two main people-related items are still the cornerstone of defining a true leader.
From caveman leader to digital leaders, these are the two constant things in our DNA. Right?
And much has changed, but actually, in terms of the core, little indeed.
All right. So Alan, I'd like to change gear a little bit, right?
Sure.
We've been talking a lot about corporates, we're talking a lot about some facts here, which is very important, especially in today's world. But I want to know the man behind the head of operational excellence in Grab. You know, was there a time in your life where you have hit a low point, you know, and how do you feel about that? How do you recover from that situation?
Oh, wow. That's a very challenging question, Tony, and I hope this portion doesn't bring tears to my eyes. But indeed, as with all folks who have sort of come along a long way in terms of their career, I too have traversed the path, right? Going from beginning as an associate level position in a government agency to eventually joining with my sort of break into the business world, right? A consulting component, right? Working with private clients to now where I've taken that business transformation ideas, right? Process improvement, automation and data analytics in-house in a tech organization. There have been highs and lows. The deepest low, I would say, in all my career thus far must be the point when I lost my job. Right. So at about a midpoint in my career, right, somewhere through those few corporate positions that I've talked about, right, my entire team was actually let go. So with this retrenchment exercise, and it came only at the very peak of a business downturn. So for those who are familiar with the financial crisis that have happened to us over the past decades, this was actually one of them. And only at a very early stage, the company quickly decided that my team was no longer required, that the function that we did back then, we were a consulting setup within a corporate global MNC organizations, right? Very early in terms of the downturn, executives had decided that this function was redundant. And I was at a loss, to be very honest, right? Because people would think that in terms of business improvement advisory, consulting types work, that boom time, gloom time, you are going to need advice like that. Executives are going to need advice in boom times in terms of which new market to go into, which new product line to set up. And in terms of troubled times, right, where can we improve our cost baseline, do more with the same, if not less, and bring us out of the woods. So I was deeply surprised, and the entire team of close to 300 people globally were very, very surprised that the decision came down so quickly and fast that we don't need an improvement function for the organization when times are bad, right? It was a huge learning experience for me, because then taking that experience into what I do today, I make it an absolute point, right, to wake up every day thinking about whether I'm still adding value to my organization. And that has been the true goal or true inspiration that has kept me going for the second half of my career thus far, right? Because I truly then believe that if you strive to add value in whatever you do and not be complacent in terms of a comfortable state where you are very adept at doing what you have been entrusted with without going the extra mile, then you will be, to the earlier point that we were talking about, at risk, right? You will face the probability of being made redundant when the times have changed, when the business goals and objectives are no longer aligned to that of your organization structure. But if you adopt in your mind forever 3 main points, I feel: the hunger for improvement and to add more value, adaptability to the evolution of business economic conditions, and changing changing your scope mix in order to be aligned to business goals. And the last thing, which is the fear of becoming redundant, right? A combination of these 3 mental models in my mind will help you to weather any career storm, as it has for me in the past.
This is so relevant, especially in today's turbulent times, and it's so much disruption for all of our audience out there. That is a message of hope. And I think when you talk about value, you talk about how to keep on making yourself relevant. It's not just about today's pandemic situation. It's also about the future of tech. A lot of people have fear about technology. If you are always adding value, I don't think that there is this concern about technology replacing your job, because you're always moving ahead. So this hunger for learning is a very key message that we have to learn from you. Alan, after all, today you are leading tri-functional teams in one of the leading organizations. That's a pride of Singapore, right? So congratulations, Alan. You have grown from strength to strength.
I'm humbled to hear that.
Yeah, your 3 wisdoms has been serving you well.
And that is what I bring to the table for my team anywhere that I go, any new scope that I take on, and to any of my mentees, right, who are willing to sort of embrace a new mental model to improve themselves. So, and I very much hope that this can benefit a far wider audience through our conversation here.
I'm sure it's already benefiting me.
I am humble.
Alan, one last question for you today before I let you go.
Yes, please.
What are some of the habits you have adopted in your life to help you to optimize your life?
To help me to optimize my life, I perhaps can take that from 2 points of view. Number one, the mental state, so the thinking habit that I have formed, and in terms of physical day-to-day activities, especially in today's COVID context, right? So we did talk about how the ways we live, work, and play are different. So today, the way I go through my daily life has also changed. In terms of the mental model, I've realized the importance of being authentic.
Right.
And that is the standard that I hold myself up to, on top of course, constantly striving myself to add more value to the organization. But it is very, very key to be authentic to the people that you interact with, be authentic to the organization in terms of business goals, and most importantly, be authentic to yourself, right? Because I've come to the realization that it really takes a lot of effort, and it's tiring to maintain multiple different personas. Right? So being authentic to the people that you work with, and also at the same time means exposing to them a little bit your own insecurities and weaknesses. But the benefits far outweigh that, because people come to see you for who you truly are, and are able to relate to what you stand for or stand against. What are the topics or issues that you would gravitate towards versus cannot stand. And I think these are the different parts that also shape who you are in front of a wider audience. So having authenticity is important. In terms of the physical day-to-day, I would say in light of today's COVID situation, and I'm sure a lot of the folks out there share my point of view, right? It is now a very different model working from home, right? Taking back-to-back Zoom calls, right? And essentially, the day just feels like there is no definitive start and end to it, right? So how do you manage time and your sort of capacity hopping in and out of topics? What I've learned to do is to take micro breaks, right? So in between back-to-back meetings, from dialing off one call into another within 30 seconds, there's hardly any time for folks to take to catch a breath these days, right? So I've learned how to using different toggles and functions in our Zoom, Teams, and other networking tools, right? To be able to say have a meal whilst you're having a meeting and discussion without being discourteous or disrespectful to stakeholders, right? So I've learned to pick that up and also leverage whatever small pockets of time in between for a quick 5-minute shut-eye to rebalance yourself and also the mental capacity, right, to take on a different conversation topic. So yeah, learning to be authentic and learning to take micro breaks has really serviced me very well so far, Tony.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, Alan. I think authenticity today is a very, very big topic by itself, and I totally agree with you. People can pick up when you're not authentic in today's world.
Indeed.
Micro breaks. Yeah, you have to teach me on that one. It's something that I would like to learn. Maybe we can talk a little bit more after the show.
Very, very happy to share, and I hope you can incorporate that into your busy work schedule, Tony.
All right.
That's crazy.
So thank you, Alan. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you on the show, and we look forward to get connected again soon.
Sure, indeed.
Right.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much, Tony, for your time and invitation. It's been a pleasure being on this show.
Thank you, Alan. See you soon.
See you. Take care, Tony.
Bye.
Take care.
Hi everyone, thank you once again for watching the Tony Tan Show and podcast. Alan Lee has provided us so much powerful insight on what does it take to be a digital organization and some powerful tips to help us to transform our organization. If you find that this podcast and this show is valuable, give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe as we have other amazing content that's coming your way very, very soon. I look forward to see you in my next show and podcast. Till then, goodbye.